Hello and welcome to the CareerFoundry Influenza Staffing Plan for 2018. My name is Jeff Frankenfeld. Every year, individuals in the United States are affected by influenza, with symptoms that range from fever, chills, and runny nose to ending up in the hospital and even death. There are certain populations affected more by the influenza, and in this presentation, these populations will be considered our vulnerable populations. Hospitals can experience a higher than normal influx of patients caused by the flu, where adequate staffing is required to properly treat these patients. I have been tasked with developing a medical staffing plan of nurses and physicians for the year of 2018 to be sent to states across the country during specific times of the year in order to meet the staffing needs for the influenza season. The data sources utilized for this analysis include the influenza mortality rate across the United States, obtained by the CDC, and the country's population data obtained from the U.S. Census Bureau. Both data sets begin in 2009 and end in 2017. To begin, by reviewing the chart on the right, we can see the sum of influenza deaths from 2009 to 2017, plotted via a line chart showing the trend over a calendar year. We can see that the first couple of months of the year are the highest, with a decrease in deaths starting in March. Then, towards the end of the year, there is an increase in influenza deaths beginning in September. Coincidentally, the months with the higher influenza death count are also the colder months of the year. Additionally, according to the CDC, it can be confirmed that peak influenza season is between December and February. With that being said, I recommend that the additional medical staff be sent to their respective locations beginning in September and gradually leave their residency in March. We should now discuss who makes up the vulnerable population. After some analysis, I would like to highlight the pie charts on the left side of the screen. The upper pie chart shows influenza deaths between two different age groups. One age group being the 1 through 64 individuals, and the other slice being individuals 65 and older. As we can see, the 65 and older age groups contribute to a much larger portion of influenza deaths. To highlight this disparity, I want to bring attention to the pie chart in the bottom left. It shows the same age groups, individuals 1 through 64 and individuals 65 and older, but highlights their overall population percentage. Even though the 65 and older age group is responsible for the vast majority of influenza deaths, they are only 14% of the United States population, whereas the other age group comprises of only 86% of the population. To further showcase the correlation between the influenza deaths and a state's population of 65 and older, I want to review the scatter plot on the right. As a state's population of 65 and older individuals increase, so does the state's overall influenza deaths. For the more technical attendees, this is a correlation coefficient of 0.95, or in other words, a strong relationship between the increase of 65 and older populations and the overall influenza death counts, no matter the age. For example, let's pick a plot here on the bottom left. Let's take a look at Kansas in 2009. In 2009, Kansas had roughly 357,000 individuals 65 and older, with an overall death count of 449. But if we follow this trend line, we can see that California in 2015 had a 65 and older age group of roughly 4.7 million individuals, but at a much larger influenza death count compared to Kansas of just over 6,000 individuals. With that being said, and these metrics taken into consideration, I have deemed that the vulnerable population for influenza are individuals 65 and older. Now that we have discussed the vulnerable population, let's talk about where the most affected states are. On the right side here, there are two bar graphs. One shows the sum of vulnerable populations by state from 2009 to 2017, and the other shows the sum of influenza deaths by state from 2009 to 2017. You might notice something interesting here. If we were to sort the states with the highest values shown at the top, we can see that the same 7 states have the highest values for each graph. Those states are California, Florida, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois. To showcase this information via map of the United States, on the left side of the screen here, you can see the same information from the bar graphs, but with the vulnerable population shown in different shades of blue, and the influenza death counts shown in different shades of red. For the vulnerable populations, the darker blues represent a larger portion, and for the influenza deaths, the darker reds and larger circles represent a higher death count. The same 7 states have both darker blues and darker reds. With that being said, these 7 states will be considered the high priority states when it comes to the medical staffing plan. If you're interested in a specific state's data points, we can view them easily here. Let's take a look at my home state of Colorado. In Colorado, from 2009 to 2017, there were roughly 5.2 million individuals 65 and older living there. And again, this is a sum with a influenza death count of 3,622. However, the metrics for the state of Colorado are not as heavily affected compared to our high priority states, and so their light blue and light red colors will be indicated as such. Let's go ahead and summarize our findings with recommendations I suggest. We can deem individuals 65 and older as the vulnerable population, and the states of California, Florida, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois as the high priority states. I'm recommending additional medical staff be sent to the high priority states beginning in September and ending in March. The remainder of the United States are to be deemed the low priority states, where the normal hospital staff is sufficient to maintain an adequate amount of nurses and physicians throughout the influenza season. Next, I would like to talk about the forecast of influenza deaths in 2018. On the bottom right, we have a time series graph showing the sum of influenza deaths from 2009 to 2017 with a 2018 forecast. It shows that the high priority states are expected to maintain the influenza deaths at roughly 23,000, you can see here. And the low priority states could see actually a slight decrease in deaths from 24,000 in 2017 to 23,000 in 2018. What this tells me here is that we shouldn't see a dramatic spike in influenza deaths pending some unforeseen circumstance. After all this, there are still considerations to keep in mind. I would suggest an analysis of vaccination rates across the states and a review of previous medical staffing to fine-tune the medical staffing needed within a state and furthermore the counties within a state. If there are any questions or comments pertaining to this presentation, please reach out. Thank you all for your time and attention, and have a good day.